"You're just a filthy thief trying to snatch that kid." The security guard's shout sliced through the autumn chill as Amara Tate knelt beside Ethan, a lost 8-year-old boy sobbing outside the glittering Westfield Mall. Amara, a black woman in her late 30s, homeless, yet radiant with dignity, had spotted Ethan wandering aimlessly, his eyes wide with fear, calling for parents who weren't there. Her worn blanket lay nearby, her only shield against the city's cold. She'd only meant to comfort him, to guide him to safety, but a bystander's accusation sparked chaos. Guards swarmed their radios, crackling, assuming Amara with her tattered coat was a kidnapper. The injustice burned Amara, once a nurse who saved lives, was now branded a criminal for helping a lost child. The crowd's whispers grew cruel, ignoring Ethan's desperate cries for his mom. This moment could break her or unleash her strength. Amara's heart tempered by past betrayals, losing her job, her home, refused to yield. With Ethan's safety at stake and her dignity under fire, she vowed to fight the lies, her quiet courage a light against the storm of prejudice threatening to erase her act of kindness. Amara Tate's calloused hands folded the tattered blanket, her only shield against Chicago's biting December wind. Her ebony skin glowed under the mall's neon lights, her eyes sharp yet kind, scanning the crowd with a nurse's instinct for those in need. Each morning she'd weave through the city's alleys, scavenging coffee cups for change, her patched coat a patchwork of survival. Once she'd worn crisp scrubs, her laughter filling hospital halls as she soothed patients. But a false accusation of stealing medical supplies, born of a co-worker's jealousy, stripped her job, her apartment, her stability. Homelessness followed a cruel echo of her childhood when she'd stood up to bullies taunting weaker kids in her South Side neighborhood. Those memories, raw and vivid, fueled her resolve. She'd vowed never to let injustice win. Now accused of kidnapping Ethan. Amara sat on a hard bench in the mall's security office, the air thick with stale coffee and suspicion. Her heart pounded. Silence could keep her safe. Let the chaos pass. But Ethan's frightened eyes haunted her, a mirror of her own pain, when the world turned its back. Staying quiet meant betraying that child within her, the one who always fought for the vulnerable. No, she wouldn't let lies define her again. With a steadying breath, she stood, her voice firm. "I'm going to the police station. I'll tell them the truth. She'd fight for Ethan for herself." The police station smelled of burnt coffee and damp linoleum, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on Amara Tate's weary face. She sat across from Detective Claire Vaughn, whose crisp blue uniform and skeptical eyes seemed to size her up in seconds. The room buzzed with urgency. Phones ringing, officers shouting about a missing billionaire's son. Ethan's disappearance had ignited a firestorm, and Amara, still in her threadbare coat, was caught in its blaze. She'd only wanted to help the boy his tear-streaked face, a silent plea as he wandered the mall's chaos. But now handcuffs bit into her wrists, and the bystander's accusation, she grabbed that kid, echoed like a verdict. Claire leaned forward, her pen tapping the desk rhythmically. "Explain yourself, Miss Tate. Why were you with Ethan Caldwell?" Her tone was clipped professional, but laced with doubt. Amara's heart raced, yet she kept her voice steady, recounting how she'd seen Ethan alone, his small hands clutching a torn backpack, his sobs drowned by holiday music. She'd knelt, offered him water from her bottle, and promised to find his parents. But the bystander's shout had twisted her kindness into a crime. The mall security footage she insisted would show the truth. Claire's eyes narrowed. Ethan's father, Richard Caldwell, a billionaire with a tech empire, had stormed into the station earlier, his tailored suit and booming voice commanding attention. "That woman's a danger." He'd roared, his influence palpable as officers scrambled to appease him. Amara, homeless and black, felt the weight of his wealth crushing her story. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in with every skeptical glance. Outside, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing through the station's windows, hungry for a scandal. The absurdity of it all stung Amara, who'd once saved lives, now reduced to a villain in a narrative she didn't write. She clasped her hands, nails digging into her palms. Shock gave way to a quiet, burning resolve. She'd faced this before, lies that stole her job, her home. But this time, a child's safety hung in the balance. "I didn't take him," she said, meeting Claire's gaze. "Check the footage. I was helping him." Claire scribbled notes, her face unreadable. "If you're lying, you'll regret this," she warned, her voice low. Amara nodded, unflinching. She'd survived worse than threats. She'd survived this too. The station's clock ticked loudly each second, a reminder of the world outside, where whispers of kidnapper spread like wildfire. Jamal, the street vendor who'd known Amara for years, had tried to speak up at the mall, shouting her innocence to deaf ears. His kindness was a flicker of hope, but it wasn't enough against Caldwell's power. Amara's truth felt fragile, a single candle in a storm. Yet she held on her nurse's heart, refusing to let go of Ethan's frightened eyes. She'd fight for him, for herself, for the chance to be heard. What do you think of Amara's courage? Like, comment, and subscribe to follow her fight for justice. The holding cell's concrete walls closed in on Amara Tate, the air heavy with the scent of mildew and despair. She sat on the edge of a rusted cot, her fingers tracing the frayed hem of her coat, each stitch a reminder of her unraveling life. The media's venom seeped through the station's thin walls, television's blaring headlines that branded her a dangerous vagrant. Online X-posts swirled with vitriol trolls, unearthing her past dismissal from the hospital, twisting it into proof of her guilt. Thief turned kidnapper. One post sneered, racking up thousands of likes. Amara's chest tightened, her breath shallow. She'd faced judgment before, but this was a storm she hadn't weathered. The world seemed to conspire against her, each accusation a brick in a wall of isolation. Outside, the city churned on. Chicago's winter wind howled, rattling the cell's barred window, a cruel echo of the life she'd lost. Once she'd been a nurse, her hands steady as she bandaged wounds or held a patient's trembling fingers. Now those hands shook not from cold, but from the weight of being unseen. Jamal, the street vendor who sold hot dogs near the mall, had tried to defend her. She pictured his warm smile, his cart's smoky aroma, his voice shouting, "She's no criminal," as security dragged her away. But his words were drowned out, his small stand no match for the billionaire's influence. Word reached her that Jamal had been questioned, his loyalty dismissed as street talk, her only ally silenced. Amara's eyes stung as she recalled her old life friends from the hospital, their laughter over shared coffee breaks. She'd reached out to a few desperate for support, but their replies were curt, distant. "I can't get involved," one texted, her words cold as the cell's floor. The betrayal cut deeper than the accusations. No one looked her way, not the officers passing by, not the janitor sweeping the hall, his eyes fixed on the ground. She was invisible, a ghost in her own story. Then a faint scrape broke the silence. A folded note slid under the cell door, its edges crumpled. Amara's pulse quickened as she unfolded it, the scrawled words chilling her, "Keep quiet, or you'll disappear." Her fingers trembled, the paper slipping to the floor. Who sent this? The bystander who'd accused her? Someone tied to Richard Caldwell, Ethan's father, whose wealth seemed to bend the city to his will. Fear coiled in her gut, but beneath it a spark of defiance flickered. She'd been pushed down before, by lies, by loss, but she'd always risen. Her childhood flashed back, standing up to bullies, her small fists clenched, protecting a classmate from taunts. That girl still lived in her, wounded but unbroken. She pressed her back against the wall, the cold seeping through her coat. Her eyes, dark and searching, caught a faint reflection in the window, a woman who'd survived too much to crumble now. She thought of Ethan, his small hand clutching hers in the mall, his trust a fragile gift. She couldn't abandon him to this narrative, couldn't let the world paint her as a monster. But the note's threat lingered, its words a shadow over her resolve. She tucked it into her pocket, a secret she'd carry until the time was right. Isolation pressed harder. The cell's silence deafening, but Amara's heart beat with a stubborn rhythm. She'd find a way to speak, to fight, even if the world refused to listen. Her thoughts drifted to her mother's voice, long gone but never forgotten. "Hold your head high, Amara. Truth don't bend." She closed her eyes, her lips moving in a silent prayer, not for salvation, but for strength. The station's clock ticked on, each second a challenge. She was alone, but not defeated. Somewhere she believed someone would see her, really see her. Until then, she'd hold fast her dignity, a shield against the storm. Amara Tate sat in the stark cell, her breath coming in shallow gasps, the cold concrete walls closing in like a vice. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare that mirrored the accusations slicing through her life. A viral video had surfaced on X, shared thousands of times, showing her grabbing Ethan's arm in the mall, her face twisted in what looked like menace. The 30-second clip, grainy and edited, painted her as a predator, a kidnapper, preying on a billionaire's son. Comments flooded in dangerous vagrant lock her up, each one a dagger to her heart. Her hands shook, not with fear, but with a fire of determination. She'd been here before, accused and abandoned, but this time a child's trust was at stake. She closed her eyes, picturing Ethan's tearful face, his small hand clutching her coat as she whispered, "It's okay, we'll find your mom." That moment so tender had been twisted into a lie. The truth, her kindness, her instinct to protect, was buried under a landslide of digital venom. The media frenzy grew, with news anchors speculating about her criminal past, dredging up the false theft accusation that had cost her nursing career. Her breath caught the cell's air, thick with mildew and despair. She'd survived loss before her job, her home, her dignity. But this felt different, heavier, as if the world had decided she was invisible. Then a deeper blow struck. Jamal, the street vendor who'd vouched for her, had vanished. Word reached her through a guard's casual remark he'd been detained for obstructing justice after trying to find witnesses at the mall. Amara's stomach churned. Jamal, with his warm smile and steaming hot dog cart, had been her only ally, shouting her innocence to deaf ears. Now he was silenced, his loyalty punished. The system felt rigged, a machine designed to crush her. She pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting the urge to scream. The note from the previous night, "Keep quiet, or you'll disappear," burned in her pocket, its threat now chillingly real. Her mind raced back to her childhood, standing up to bullies on the South Side, her small fists clenched as she shielded a classmate from harm. That girl, fierce and unbroken, still lived in her. She thought of her mother's words, "Truth don't bend, Amara." But the truth seemed so far away now, drowned by the edited video's lies. The cell's silence was deafening, broken only by the distant clatter of the station. She felt alone, yet Ethan's trusting eyes haunted her. She'd promised to help him, and that promise fueled her resolve. Her hands steadied her jaw set. She wouldn't let this break her. A faint spark of hope flickered. A young journalist, skeptical but curious, had visited the station earlier, asking questions about her story. Amara had poured out her truth, how she'd comforted Ethan, how the bystander's shout had sparked chaos. The journalist's pen scribbled furiously, her eyes narrowing with interest. Could she be the key? Amara didn't know, but she clung to the possibility. Meanwhile, the mall's unedited security footage, her lifeline, remained out of reach, buried in bureaucratic delays. Without it, her story was just a whisper against the roar of public outrage. The station's clock ticked on, each second a reminder of her precarious situation. Jamal's absence gnawed at her, and the note's threat loomed large. Was it Caldwell's doing the billionaire pulling strings to protect his reputation? Or someone else hidden in the shadows? Amara's heart pounded, but her resolve burned brighter. She'd been pushed down before, but she'd always risen. This time she'd fight for Ethan, for Jamal, for herself. The truth was out there, and she'd find a way to make it heard, even if the world refused to listen. How will Amara break through the lies to reclaim her truth? Like, comment, and subscribe to follow her fight. Amara Tate sat on the cell's cold cot, her heart a drumbeat of defiance, despite the weight of the world's judgment. The viral video's lies had branded her a villain, but a flicker of hope had sparked in the darkness. Her breath steadied as she clung to the memory of Ethan's trusting eyes, her promise to protect him, fueling her resolve. The station's hum phones ringing, officers murmuring, felt distant, as if the world outside was shifting. She didn't know it yet, but the tide was turning. The young journalist, Sarah Nguyen, who'd visited earlier, had sensed truth in Amara's story. Hungry for a scoop, Sarah dug deeper, tracking down the mall's unedited security footage through a contact in the security office. The tape, buried in a backlog of bureaucratic red tape, showed Amara kneeling beside Ethan, her hand gentle on his shoulder, her voice soft as she calmed his sobs. No menace, no malice, just compassion. Sarah leaked the footage to X, where it spread like wildfire, shared by users, with captions like "This is the real story and justice for Amara." The hashtag trended a digital roar that drowned out the earlier lies. Jamal, released from detention after a night of questioning, refused to stay silent. His hot dog cart was a fixture near the mall, his warm smile known to regulars. He'd seen Amara's kindness firsthand and wouldn't let her be erased. At a local diner, he cornered a mall janitor, Miguel, who'd witnessed the incident. Miguel, hesitant at first, agreed to speak. She was helping the kid, he told Sarah, his voice rough but certain. That other guy he yelled for no reason. His testimony, paired with the footage, began to chip away at the narrative Richard Caldwell's wealth had built. Detective Claire Vaughn, her skepticism softening, faced mounting pressure. The station's phone lines buzzed with calls from advocacy groups and reporters demanding Amara's release. Claire reviewed the footage, her jaw tightening as she realized her initial bias. She'd seen Amara's worn coat, her weathered face, and assumed the worst. Now the truth stared back at her, undeniable. She visited Amara's cell, her voice quieter than before. "We're looking into this," she said, her eyes meeting Amara's for the first time. "But it's not over yet." Amara nodded, her gaze steady. She'd heard promises before. She'd wait for action. Outside, the city stirred. Protesters gathered at the station, holding signs that read, "See the truth, and Amara is innocent." X posts amplified their voices, with users sharing stories of others wronged by snap judgments. The public's outrage shifted toward Caldwell, whose rush to condemn Amara now seemed reckless. Whispers surfaced that the bystander who'd accused her was a known associate of Caldwell's PR team, paid to stir chaos and deflect from his own neglect. Ethan had wandered off during a distracted phone call. The billionaire's empire, once untouchable, began to wobble. Amara felt the shift, subtle but real. A guard slipped her a note, not a threat this time, but a message from Sarah. "We've got the footage. Hold on." Her heart lifted, though. Doubt lingered. The system had failed her before, and Caldwell's influence was vast. But the growing support, Jamal's loyalty, Miguel's courage, Sarah's tenacity gave her strength. She thought of her mother's words, "Truth don't bend." For the first time in days, she believed it might hold. Claire called a press conference announcing a review of the case. The unedited footage played on screens across the city, Ethan's small voice audible in the clip, "Thank you, nice lady." Amara's eyes stung as she watched from a station monitor, her dignity clawing its way back. Caldwell's team scrambled issuing statements, but the damage was done. His reputation cracked, his neglect exposed. Amara, though, still in the cell, felt a weight lift. The truth was surfacing, but would it be enough to set her free? What does Amara's fight mean to you? Like, comment, and subscribe to stand with her. The Chicago courtroom was a sea of murmurs, its wooden benches packed with reporters and protesters, their eyes fixed on Amara Tate. She stood tall, her worn coat replaced by a borrowed blazer, her face a mask of quiet strength. The unedited mall footage had gone viral, exposing the truth. Amara, comforting Ethan, not abducting him. The bystander's false accusation, unraveled, revealed as a paid stunt by a low-level operative in Richard Caldwell's PR machine, meant to shield the billionaire's neglect. Ethan's recorded statement, played in court, sealed the shift. "The nice lady helped me feel safe," his small voice echoed, piercing the room's tension. The judge dismissed the charges, and Amara was free. Cheers erupted outside, where supporters waved "Justice for Amara" signs. Detective Claire Vaughn, standing at the courtroom's edge, offered a nod, her earlier skepticism replaced by a grudging respect. "I misjudged you?" She admitted softly, her words a rare crack in her stoic facade. Amara nodded, back her heart heavy despite the victory. The media frenzy had painted her as a hero now, but the scars of being branded a criminal lingered. Her old life nursing stability was still gone, stolen by a past injustice that this triumph couldn't erase. Caldwell issued a public apology, his polished voice trembling on national news, his reputation tarnished. His company lost a major contract, and whispers of neglectful parenting dogged him. Yet Amara's victory came at a cost. The media circus had drained her, each headline a reminder of her vulnerability. Friends who'd turned away during the ordeal sent hesitant messages, but trust was fractured. Jamal, her loyal friend, stood by her, his hot dog cart parked outside the courthouse, a beacon of constancy. But the note, "Keep quiet, or you'll disappear," still haunted her. Its sender untraced a shadow over her freedom. Amara retreated to a small shelter, craving quiet. Her spirit, though resilient, was bruised. The world had seen her truth, but justice, she realized, was never perfect. It demanded sacrifice, her privacy, her peace, her faith in the system. She sat on a cot, staring at a cracked mirror, seeing the girl who'd once stood up to bullies, now a woman who'd faced a city's wrath. "Truth don't bend," she whispered, echoing her mother, but the words felt bittersweet. She'd won, but the cost was etched in her weary eyes. Amara Tate's victory rippled through Chicago, stirring change in a city that had nearly silenced her. The case sparked a citywide review of how law enforcement treated the homeless, with advocacy groups pushing for reforms. New policies emerged, mandatory bias training for officers, and a task force to investigate false accusations. On X, Justice for Amara fueled petitions gathering thousands of signatures for better protections for the marginalized. The media, once quick to vilify, shifted tone, publishing exposés on systemic prejudice. Richard Caldwell, his reputation bruised, funded a shelter named after Amara, a gesture she met with quiet skepticism. She declined the ribbon-cutting ceremony, unwilling to be a symbol for his redemption. Amara chose peace over the spotlight. She moved into a modest shelter, its walls lined with donated books, a small comfort. One evening, she walked to the bench where she'd once slept, the city's hum softer now. Kneeling, she placed a single white flower on the weathered wood, a silent tribute to her resilience and those still unseen. Jamal joined her, his hot dog cart nearby, his presence a steady anchor. A small group of supporters, strangers turned allies, walked with her, their footsteps a quiet promise of community. The flower caught the breeze, its petals bright against the dusk. Amara's story wasn't just hers. It was a call to see the humanity in those society overlooks. Her quiet act of remembrance under the city's watchful lights spoke louder than any headline. What changes will you champion after Amara's story? Like, comment, and subscribe to amplify the voiceless.